On March 28, 2025, Charlie Javice, the 32-year-old founder of financial aid startup Frank, was convicted by a Manhattan federal jury of defrauding JPMorgan out of $175 million. The jury found her guilty on all 4 federal charges: securities fraud, wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy. The conviction came after a 5-week trial that ended one of the most closely watched startup fraud cases since Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. Javice now faces the possibility of up to 30 years in federal prison, though federal sentencing guidelines suggest she will likely receive between 14 and 17 years when sentenced. The scheme that fooled America's largest bank. Javice founded Frank in 2017 as a company that promised to simplify the notoriously complex process of filling out the free application for federal student aid. The startup quickly gained attention, with Javice appearing regularly on cable news programs and making Forbes 30 Under 30 lists in 2019. But prosecutors revealed that Javice's success story was built on lies. When JPMorgan sought to acquire Frank in 2021, Javice repeatedly claimed the company had 4.25 million users when it actually had fewer than 300,000. The fraud was remarkably brazen. When JPMorgan demanded verification of Frank's customer base, Javice first asked her director of engineering to create fake synthetic data. When he refused, concerned about the legality, Javice responded, "We don't want to end up in orange jumpsuits." Javice then paid a college friend $18,000 to use a computer program to create millions of fake names with fabricated personal information. This fake data was sent to JPMorgan's third-party verification vendor, which never actually checked whether the people listed were real. The $175 million payday. Based on Javice's fraudulent representations about Frank's user base, JPMorgan agreed to purchase the company for $175 million in September 2021. Javice personally received over $21 million from selling her equity stake and was about to receive another $20 million as a retention bonus. The bank's goal was to connect with college students and build lifelong, engaged relationships with this rising consumer demographic. Jamie Dimon, JPMorgan CEO, took a personal interest in the acquisition and met with Javice about 3 weeks before the deal closed, telling her the bank should get the deal done. How the fraud unraveled. The scheme began to collapse about 15 months after the acquisition, when JPMorgan tried to contact Frank's supposed customers to market their banking products. The bank received far fewer responses than they expected from what they believed were 4 million customers. JPMorgan filed a lawsuit against Javice in December 2022, just 1 month after firing her, alleging she had created over 4 million fake user accounts. By April 2023, federal prosecutors in Manhattan had filed criminal charges. The trial, key testimony and defense strategy. The trial featured dramatic testimony from Frank's former employers. Patrick Volvor, Frank's chief software engineer, testified that Javice asked him to generate synthetic data to support her claim of over 4 million users. When Volvor refused, saying, "I told them I would not do anything illegal," Javice turned to outside help. Data science Adam Kapelner testified that Javice paid him $18,000 to create fake user data, but refused to tell him why she needed it. He described creating millions of fake users by recombining elements of Frank's real user data. Javice's defense, led by prominent attorney Jose Baez, argued that JPMorgan knew what it was getting into and fabricated fraud allegations due to buyer's remorse after regulatory changes made the acquisition less valuable. Defense lawyers also tried to undermine Volvor's credibility by suggesting he was romantically interested in Javice and bitter about being rejected, which he denied. The conviction and co-conspirator. Both Javice and her co-defendant Olivier Amar, Frank's chief growth and acquisition officer, were convicted on all 4 counts. Each faces conspiracy, bank fraud, and wire fraud charges punishable by up to 30 years in prison. Javice appeared sullen as the verdict was read, while several family members sitting behind her held each other and audibly sobbed. Her sentencing is scheduled for August 26, 2025, while Amar will be sentenced on July 23rd. JPMorgan's due diligence failures. The trial revealed significant questions about JPMorgan's due diligence process. Despite having some 350 staffers involved in vetting the deal, the bank failed to detect the fraud and twice turned down offers to have Frank's data verified by an outside firm. The bank hired third-party vendor Axiom to verify that Javice's data contained 4.2 million entries. But when Axiom offered to verify the entries using reverse phone data to link phone numbers to actual names and addresses, JPMorgan declined the additional verification. The data scientist who created the fake data testified that a few phone calls to those users would have revealed them to be fake. Jamie Dimon later called the Frank acquisition a huge mistake. The broader context: another tech fraud. Javice joins a growing list of young tech executives who vaulted to fame and media accolades with supposedly disruptive or transformative companies, only to see their businesses collapse amid questions about whether they had engaged in puffery and fraud. The case has drawn comparisons to Sam Bankman-Fried, the FTX founder, who was convicted and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Forbes, which had featured Javice on its 30 under 30 list, later placed her on its Hall of Shame, featuring pics it wished it could take back. Previous legal troubles. This wasn't Javice's first brush with regulatory issues. In 2018, Frank settled with the federal government over accusations that the startup was misrepresenting its ties to the Department of Education. She was also sued by a co-founder over wage theft in Israel in order to pay $35,000 in 2021. The sentencing outlook. Legal experts expect Javice to receive between 14 and 17.5 years in prison when sentenced, though the judge could impose a lower sentence since she has no prior criminal history. Her lawyers have argued against requiring her to wear an ankle monitor while awaiting sentencing, claiming it would interfere with her new career teaching Pilates classes. Industry reaction. Wall Street dealmakers expressed little sympathy for Javice. One venture executive called it an open and shut case, noting that Javice created fake customers and left a clear paper trail. Another private equity executive described it as just regular ego-driven fraud. However, some in the investment community are questioning how JPMorgan, a giant and sophisticated bank with an army of top-notch lawyers, failed to detect such obvious fraud. Frank's demise. JPMorgan shut down the Frank website in January 2023, effectively ending the company that once promised to revolutionize financial aid applications. The bank's attempt to acquire young customers through Frank ultimately cost them $175 million in significant reputational damage. What this means for startup due diligence. The Javice case serves as a stark reminder that even sophisticated financial institutions can fall victim to fraud. Legal experts note that buyers often fall in love with deals, causing them to overlook critical due diligence steps. The case also highlights how con artists often possess qualities that make them appear credible, charismatic, and likable, similar to other high-profile fraudsters like Bernie Madoff. The final chapter. Charlie Javice's conviction marks the end of a remarkable fall from grace. From Forbes' 30 under 30 honoree to convicted felon facing decades in prison, her story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of startup hype, insufficient due diligence, and the temptation to fabricate success when reality falls short of promises. As she awaits sentencing, Javice's case stands as one of the most significant startup fraud convictions in recent years, joining the ranks of Elizabeth Holmes and Sam Bankman-Fried as young entrepreneurs whose fraudulent schemes ultimately caught up with them. The $175 million price tag makes it one of the largest financial fraud cases involving a fintech startup, and its resolution sends a clear message that even the most promising young entrepreneurs are not above the law.
Ever wonder why we pay the piper? Or how bankers saved millions during wartime? Money isn't just currency, it's a story spanning centuries, filled with fascinating tales you won't believe. In Money is Fascinating, Peter uncovers over 100 incredible stories about the thing that makes the world go round. From hilarious banking blunders to mind-blowing facts about modern finance, discover why money is more fascinating than you ever imagined. Money is Fascinating. Available now wherever books are sold.